Hello, everyone, and welcome to Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where we have stimulating conversations around diverse topics and stories impacting our Asian Pacific American communities. I'm your host, Rasha Goel. Now, today on Asian Pacific Voices Radio, we welcome a powerhouse of creativity and cultural expression. Raised in Hong Kong and now based in the US, she is a Chinese-American costume designer with over 15 years of experience in film, television, commercials, and music videos. Her artistry has brought characters to life in globally recognized projects like The Walking Dead, Netflix's Marco Polo, Boogie and the Brother Sun, where she collaborated closely with Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh. Trilingual in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English, her cross-cultural lens is reflected in her dynamic, deeply informed costume work that bridges continents and centuries. It is my pleasure to welcome Vera Chow on Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Thanks for being here, Vera.
Hello. Hi.
And you are chiming in from Hong Kong at this time.
Yes, I am. It's 9 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, well,
Yes.
it is a pleasure. And so thank you again for being here with us. Well, you're there for work, but you actually were raised in Hong Kong, educated across
hmm
the US and Europe. And of course, you're now working in Hollywood. So, how would you say your multicultural background has influenced your creative vision as a costume designer?
How that is, I think it is important. The way I approach a lot of this is to know that I don't know anything. And I think being raised in different countries really teaches you to think from, like, always doubt what you're told, always question the status quo. And then when you kind of approach everything as like a baby, you kind of learn a lot more on. I know that's not making any sense. I'll make more sense as I continue along. But I think that's helpful because I kind of am in the middle of nowhere. I'm all the cultures, and that does help me have a way more objective lens in looking at everything.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. I'd like to jump into your work with Marco Polo. Well, actually, from Marco Polo to the Brother Sun. A lot of your projects have had a deep cultural and historical roots to them. So, how do you approach designing costumes that honor cultural authenticity while you're still serving the narrative?
I feel like to me, cultural authenticity is a very tricky term. When you are a person of color designing for a show that seemingly is your culture, one also needs to be aware that, like, I don't speak for the entire Asian community. So, like, what is even authenticity? Like, what I've learned working on these shows is, as someone that is bicultural, tricultural, and then I work with Asian Americans and I work with Asian Brits, and then I work with people that are locally Asia, our definition of authenticity is entirely different. That is a very interesting place to be when you learn that what everyone thinks is the right portrayal are not the same. So I take a lot of creative liberties when I do that. You ask everyone from every angle and you try to mix it in together. And does that cause some history buffs to nitpick on certain things? Yes, for sure. But then again, it needs to look pretty. So it's a little sprinkle of it's a balance of incorporating all of it at the same time and answering to a studio.
Yes, I mean that's the bigger picture at the end, right?
Yes.
But you bring up a really interesting point, Vera, and I think that's a great conversation even on a bigger scale, especially when you come to a diaspora like the Asian American or even Asians, right? First of all, it is so large, and how can you really define it by authenticity? Because we are different. Yeah, like I'm
hmm
Indian, I'm South Asian, right? And a South Asian American is different than the South Asians that are in India versus the South Asians in Europe. So I love that point that you brought up. And I think, yeah, that's a deeper dive to really look into as we continue to build and evolve in
hmm
filmmaking and creating these different narratives. It was so fascinating to read about you working with Michelle on The Brother
Yeah.
Sun. So that must have been incredible. Can you share maybe a little bit about that collaboration and how it helped shape your work on the project? Did you work closely with
Uh,
her on deciding her
mhm.
costuming?
Yes. So to preface, you know how people always say, do not meet your heroes? That is not true. It depends on who it is. Because don't worry, I wasn't going anywhere bad with that. Like, in my experience of having worked with Joan Chen and then Michelle and then Lucy, like I was I'm not gonna lie, I was afraid. I was like so nervous at the beginning. It's like, like even my parents are like disbelieving that they don't even believe me at first when I said I'm working with them. So going in there, I felt like I always have more like a daughter type of like vibe when I go in. I shouldn't, but I went in like, hey mom, like, what do you what do
Is
you
that a
think?
cultural thing we do?
I don't
Out
know.
of respect.
Maybe because I was like, do you like it? Like, which I don't do with other people. But thank God that they help set such a good, Michelle for sure set such a good tone in our meeting immediately. She's so warm, so informative that I dispelled that whole like thing very quickly, and we start talking like, collaborators. And I think because I was in the prep mode for Brother Sun for quite a bit, and I was falling into the stereotype of a St. Gabriel Valley mom. And my mind was in that one space. And she came in and challenged me, saying, yeah, we all know what a St. Gabriel Valley mom looks like, but how many triad moms do you know? And she actually made me question my approach in a very collaborative way. So we inserted a lot of elements that are a little bit more luxurious than what a San Gabriel mom, San Gabriel Valley mom would have, or there are little bits that, her jewelry is a little bit cleaner, nicer, her colors are a little sharper. There is secret tailoring that, is a woman of means that she probably bought it back from Taiwan. So collaborating with her is a good reminder to pull back and look at the big picture and not get stuck in a creative narrative because you've been like in it for so long.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And speaking of so long, we talked about your global upbringing, but how did you actually get into costume designing? Was this something you knew off the back you wanted to do or you had a knack for, or did you fall into it?
I did not fall into it. This sounds a little psychotic because I've been in this like this sounds very Asian, this one tunnel vision. I've wanted to specifically be a costume designer for film and TV only since I was 13. And that wasn't
Oh,
even like a job that I knew existed. Like nobody really grows up going like, do you know that being a crew member is a job? So I wanted to be a vet like most kids, and then I realized, wait, what do you mean I have to like see them go? And I was like, I can't do it. And then when I was like lost, because growing up in Asia, you're supposed to know what you want to do by the time you're like 10. You just like have a career path or something. And then I remember like Cirque du Soleil came to town for the first time in the early 90s. And then there's like interviews of like the performers and the choreographers and the costume designer. And I was like, that is a job. And then I saw these performers in like just their t-shirt and jeans, and I was just like, oh, disappointing. Like in their regular clothes. And I was like, oh, they're not that great. They're not that glamorous. Like, and then that's when I realized that there's this person there creating the narrative and helping assist the story come to life. And then I was like obsessed. So it was like Cirque du Soleil that did it. I'm part of their fan club, like
I
to
love
this day.
this. I love that you knew at 13 this is what you wanted to do. I was like that too. I knew at 9 what I wanted to do. But there's very few of us, and that is
Hmm.
so cool. I love that. And then you probably realize it's not as glamorous as it looks either. It's fun, right? But it's a,
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
it
Um
is.
Costume designing. Let's talk about that whole aspect. 'Cause I'm so fascinated by it. And we know that it's not just about the aesthetics. There's a lot that
Hmm.
goes into it. There's psychology, there's movement, there's identity. I mean, you're really building and creating this persona.
Right.
So how do you, Vera, begin designing a costume, especially when you first read a script or you meet a character? What's your process?
I wish more people would say this to actually a lot of directors and showrunners out there because they still think it's like shopping and fashion. And, I wish that's all there is. That's the final sugar coating of everything after the first part is done. Um, I was a literature major first because my whole thing is actually to dissect. Like, I don't, this sounds contradictory, but I do not love fashion. I do not think
Mm,
fashion is an indicator of, like, fashion is a great indicator of culture, and it indicates psychology,
yes,
but fashion itself is a product of psychology. Like
that makes
fashion
sense.
shouldn't, like the psychology happens first and then the clothing comes after, not the other way around. And I feel like
Mm.
people don't always think about that. So I dissect it like reading a literature, like, a piece of literature, like where do they come from? Like I think about nothing related to clothing. It's character profiles that come first, comparisons to people that I think about, characters that like, people in previous stories that I've read about. And then the design part comes in. Like usually there's a color palette, and the whole thing is a very common practice for what we do now is like mood boards that are like Pinterest and Google Images. I know I have to do it. That's part of the process. But I don't love it because if it exists on Pinterest, that means I'm not creating anything original, you know?
Mm.
Like if it already exists on Pinterest, if it exists on Google Images, then how is that an original design? So I make pretty unhinged mood boards because I usually have a picture and then like a giant paragraph explaining what I'm changing about it. I hope that explains what I'm trying to, I hope that
No, it
explains the
definitely
process a little
does.
bit. It's very
It definitely
literary instead
does.
of visual.
And I get what you're saying too, that it's not about just going shopping. It,
Yes.
it is you're evolving you're actually kind of at the inception of who this character is going to be for the rest of the entire season or
Mm-hmm.
series or film. So it's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. But here's the thing, what I'm curious to also know with your expertise and giving the ever evolving world, how do you think the future of costume designing is going to be with the advent of new techs? Like we've got AI coming in, we've got 3D printing, we got virtual production creeping in.
Hmm. I don't love AI. Oh, I don't.
No.
I don't know what to. I don't know how to. I think it's a wonderful tool for designers to learn to utilize it correctly. The danger is not coming from AI itself as a technology. It's coming from, I keep making producers and showrunners and studios sound like evil people. They're not. They just have a different baseline than us. We create the story and they create revenue and content. Like everyone has a different goal. So if they are not the author of the art itself, that sounded so obnoxious, but the author of the art itself, and they don't understand what we just talked about, is that the psychology comes before the fashion, like not the other way around. So they would use AI
Right.
in a way to replace us because they are missing all these steps in the psychology and the character development. In their mind, it's just the clothing. AI can't do that part. So us as designers will reap great benefit from AI as a tool if the person that we answer to understands that it is a tool
Yeah.
and understands that that's like how they're trying to use it is not how we're trying to use it.
Absolutely. And I'm with
Yeah,
you on that, Vera. I do, because I don't feel that AI can do what the actual costume designer can do with the personal touch. If you need to do a tweak and stuff. So again, it's utilizing the tool for the designer to create something, but not necessarily replacing the designer or the job
right,
essentially, right?
right.
Well, on a fun note, then let me ask you this: if you could design a costume for any film or fictional universe, no budgets, no limits, just total creative freedom, what would that be? What would that look like for you?
I want to do a weird show that's like dressing animals. I don't know. I
I've
don't even
never
know what
heard
that,
that.
like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I love my cast, but like animals don't have opinions on how they dress. Like, I mean, right now on the show I'm on right now, I'm very lucky. The cast they're great friends of mine. They're lovely. They are not difficult. They are like dressing my friends. But that's not always the case. And sometimes I just want to say, you don't know. You don't
Well,
know. stop.
What?
But but
I'm trying to
animals will
figure out what you would
just
put on a dog or a cat or a tiger.
I
What
don't
does
know.
that
That's the
look
thing. The
like?
narrative would be so fun. And then, like, that would be where AI can help me with, like, patterns and stuff.
I
I
see.
took a pattern making class for dog clothing at FIT.
Really?
And I thought I was like, oh, easy. I did Parsons. I was terrible. It did not fit my dog. I measured
Oh.
him head to toe and I was like, I'm so good at this. And it was awful. It did not fit him. And he just let me have five fittings with him and he's like, this is not comfortable. Like, but I want to get
Poor
good at it. I want to
thing.
know what that means. Like there are all these shows out there now. Like they I mean they're computer generated, but I was like, if there is a show that
Yes.
has like, I don't know, it's just
All
like a
right, we
whole
need to find
new
you
thing.
one. We
Yeah.
need to find you a
Yeah.
new an animal show in that
Dress the
genre. That would be
tiger, dress the spider. I don't care. I just want to dress a fish.
a spider. Good Lord, I would not be able to be on that
Like,
set with you. I'd be screaming. Um, you mentioned you're working on something right now too, and that's why you're in Hong Kong. You're filming this
yes.
season. What can you tell us about this show and what how you're working on it or what you're bringing to it?
That like yeah, that does go back to a couple of things we are talking about before. The joke we have is we're filming the season one of the season. The show was announced, I think, a couple weeks ago on Deadline and Variety. So
Hmm.
things that I can say without having to kill anybody is, we all know Jesse May Lee's on it, Toby Stevens is on it, Justin Chan's on it, and a couple other cast that will be a surprise. So it has the producers from Crazy Rich Asians on it, and a line producer that I adore, who was the one that worked with me on Marco Polo on a couple shows in China, Malaysia, Hong Kong. Like he's like the professor of working in Asia. So so
Nice.
I felt when I first got this, there are two things. I felt like I was like, as Hong Kong is home turf. I know this like the back of my hand. Like, but then the second part is like I have this pressure that if I'm from Hong Kong and everybody knows I'm from Hong Kong, if there's it's like some weird self-imposed responsibility that I need to do right by this show. But and then there's also the fact that this is a global audience. Like, do people get it? Do people not? Do people like did what do people like and not like about Crazy Rich Asians? What do people like and not like about the expats? Like,
Right.
do I care? Do I take that into consideration? So there's a lot of that involved. And so all that said, this show is like White Lotus, but set in Hong Kong.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and
Curious.
love the cast. The cast is coming in from Australia, from England, from Canada, from China, from Hong Kong. It's like a dream come true. Like I used to say brother son is
Oh,
the dream job. This is also the premise of it is a dream job, and um it's sexy. There's the
nice.
conspiracy.
It's
That's
got
it.
all the makings.
Mm, that's it. And the cast is beautiful, as we know. They're
Oh, yes.
amazing.
That
Yeah.
that for sure we can tell.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. But it sounds like there's fun, but there's pressure. But again, you're just contributing to this narrative that we're going to see pop up on the screen. So I'm excited for you. That sounds like a lot of
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you. Yeah. I have my team. My current team is entirely local,
Oh.
which here's one thing I do also want to bring up, particularly at this interview, is like I think for especially with productions now going overseas so much for one reason or the other that we'll not get into now. I do hope that designers that do have a chance to be sent overseas really try to hire the locals and learn from them instead of going like, I need to bring my supervisor with me. I need to bring my assistant designer with me. It is not because you need them. Deep down, you're just scared. Like, because it's a different way of working. You don't speak their language. Granted that I speak the language here, but I adore my local team in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, in China. They are so different and it starts out super chaotic, but you learn so much from them that I have brought
Oh.
some things I've learned back to the US a lot. And I encourage everyone that has the right, not the right, the privilege to work overseas to really consider what the locals' expertise and not treat them as like local assistants.
Okay. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think that's the beauty too, right? You get to take when you're
Hmm.
working globally like this, you get to kind of bring all the different nuggets and pieces back home, which kind of again contribute to our experience
Hmm.
and how we work and we create. Oh, how fun! Thank you for sharing that. I think that is really an important piece for people
Hmm.
to remember. And then touching upon too, as a woman of Asian descent. We work in this competitive and Western dominated industry, right? I mean, we've seen changes
Mm.
happen, which has been great. But
Hmm.
what were there some obstacles that you would say that came your way as you were kind of, making your dreams come true and working and having your breakthroughs?
Um, Depends on how real you want me to get here. But
Get
yes,
real,
there.
man. Get real because let me there it's I know I work in this business. I know how it can
Mhm.
be.
Right. I mean, like I mean, I've been doing this since 2005, and I mean, I'm sure you and I have faced a lot of like passive aggressive jokes, sexist jokes, racist jokes that we had to just laugh it off while learning to code switch. Like for the longest time, I remember when I talked to my parents, I refused to switch back to Chinese because you'll be laughed at, you know. And then now I remember just 2 years ago on Brother's Son, I was sitting at a production meeting with like producers and writers that are all American. And my mom called and I was like, why doesn't the ma? Like, it's an entirely different pride I have. I'm like, what you gonna do about it? We're here now. I am the designer. You're gonna laugh at me, or are you gonna sit here because the show is about my people and not yours? So the feeling is different, and it almost makes me feel like sometimes I wonder, did I do the right thing by hiding this before? Am I ashamed that I have hidden how quote unquote Asian I am before? And the obstacles you mentioned is unfortunately I shouldn't be ashamed, or not necessarily unfortunately, is that during that climate, if we are not just so skilled at code switching, we would not be allowed in this space. Therefore, we can stop code switching, and therefore future generations can stop code switching. So these obstacles are necessary almost to like suppress cultural our cultural upbringing, to almost, that sounds so messed up. This is why they might be listening on, to infiltrate the space. We got to infiltrate the space. And then start talking to my parents in Cantonese in the middle of a studio lot. So I have missed out on a lot of shows with the Asian topics to designers that are not Asian. I think it's a blessing in disguise because I think it does help me navigate the space and learn to not be bitter and just learn how to, I must use that word again, infiltrate. Yikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a catch 22 to that too. Like Vera, don't you want to be working on projects that both, yes, have the cultural affiliation, but then
Hmm.
also, like The Walking Dead, right? That's not
Exactly.
necessarily an Asian American project. And I think
Right.
that's where the battle comes in because I similarly dealt with the same thing as you did. And I also think it was the time and the journey, right? Because maybe as we were growing up, we're trying to balance these two cultures and making our way
Hmm.
and assimilating into this industry that's still growing and at a time wasn't really accepting people from different communities. But now, like, oh, all of a sudden it's cool to be Indian. People want to wear the bindis, the dots on
Hmm.
the forehead that they used to make fun of. All of a
Oh my
sudden
God.
the fabrics are
Yeah.
riching, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we want to come do your festival of color. Like all of a sudden it's cool now. Wasn't cool when
Hmm.
I was growing up. And it was, the same thing, talking in the language. But now I think we're at a place where, like you said, you can pick up that phone and have a conversation with your mom in the language you want to. And I think that there's a
Hmm.
certain freedom with that, but it's also the timing of where we're at now and the
Right.
types of projects, right, that we get to work
Right.
on. So
And then, like you said,
it's
it's a catch
interesting.
22 because when you the catch-22 clearly doesn't come from people of color. It comes from the studios and the general
Yes.
climate learning how to accept this new, I don't know, new demographic. Is that then you see, say, my beloved Justin Chan, like, okay, cool, he's a great actor, lead in Brother Sun, lead in The Season, like the king in Avatar. So is this all you see? He
Right,
can do
right,
everything, you know? Then aside from The Walking Dead, am I just the Asian one?
right.
Why why does it have to be one or the other? And I do know that this is a very tricky thing for us to step into. Like, there are designers out there of Asian descent that wants nothing to do with this art genre. For
Mhm.
that reason, is self-preservation. And then it is not their fault or my fault that we're now in this space. It is the cultural climate's fault that we have to choose a space. Why
Yeah.
do we have to choose a space? Like,
Yes, I'm with you on that. And that's the unfortunate part. I don't think we should have to. I
yeah.
think it should be recognized by your talent and who you are. Yes, I happen to be
Hmm.
from this community. Okay, great, but that's not who I am, right?
Yeah, and I think it takes time. I think because first, we're not the first generation. We're maybe the first or second generation to start really being seen and given the visibility that
True.
we're due. Maybe teach studios to walk before you teach them how to run because they can't. They can't do it.
I think
It's
we need to do that little coaching session that you talked about. And I'm happy to lead those discussions with
yeah.
you about having the conversations ahead of time in front of a production. Given all this, I have just a few minutes left here. What advice now would you want to give to aspiring costume designers, especially young AAPI creatives that are coming in or who want to carve out their name in this industry? I mean, there's, I think, very few Asian American costume designers from what I know. I could be wrong here.
It's a growing number. It's a
Okay.
growing number for sure. But definitely, well, I think gatekeeping was a really big thing in our, like, my advice is to, I mean, this sounds very reductive, is to not gatekeep, but I think there's a lot more nuance in it because I think culturally, again, this is a broad stroke, as Asians, East Asians, Southeast Asians, like South Asians in general, we tend to gatekeep more. Ooh, don't come for
Yes.
me, social media. Like, this is just an observation. Like,
We do.
in
We
yeah,
do.
like we were told to hold these things close to our chest. So, like, when I moved to the U.S. here, I'm not in the U.S. right now. Like, I learned that like American designers, but oh, these are my vendors. This is my assistant. This is my blah blah blah. Like, oh yeah, oh my budget is so and so and so. Like, this is much more open than when I work anywhere in Asia. I have to go to the connection to talk to the connection they want to give me. And there's so much like honor and face and hierarchy involved, which is a virtue in our culture. But
Mhm.
I think in the Hollywood space, it doesn't really serve us because it took me 15 years in the business to realize that there's like 10 more of us out there, like costume designers of Asian descent, like 10 to 15 more of us because we didn't know each other even existed. Like we never shared resources. We don't know each other's out there until the recent change in the political climate of the industry that we start finding each other. And now we do dinners. Like, I brought my parents to meet them all, so that was, yeah. I mean, I don't think I would bring my parents randomly to a costume designer lunch, which is like not entirely Asian, because they'll be like, why are you bringing your mom? But at at a dinner, at a
But
lunch
we
with
get it.
all AAPI designers, I'm like, this is my mom, this is my dad, and it just seems
Yeah.
really normal.
Yeah.
Like,
That
yeah,
is so true. And that's
yeah,
just some of the cultural aspects of it.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun talking to you. Anything else you want to add before we take you into our lightning fun round?
I don't know. Be ready to pivot. I mean, this industry is looking. I don't want to say grim. Grim is not the word. People, like, I
No,
guess
let's
I
stay
my
hopeful.
yeah yeah my personal take as someone that doesn't just work in the U.S. is pivot. Like, because people are like the jobs will come back to the U.S. So that I was like, it's not. Like, so just be
Pivot.
open to pivoting.
Okay.
Yeah. Lean
Well,
into a
those are
niche.
just
If you are a person of color, if you're API, that will help you because you can pivot. So do
some
it.
good advice. I'd come pivot with you, but I can barely safety pin things. So I would
Pivot.
be of no use
Pivoting.
to you, Vera. All right. I'm going to ask you some 6 quick, fun questions. Just whatever comes to
Mm,
the top of your head. They're like 5-second answers. Are you ready?
mm.
Okay. What's one must have in your kit on set?
Oh, oh my God, safety pins. Safety pins pinned on my entire body. Mm.
Historic drama or sci fi fantasy?
Sci-fi. I could do whatever I want.
A dream story that you'd love to design for?
Oh, we talked about that. Animals. Just animals. Or a show about a nude camp.
Okay. There's no costume. Okay, that's a whole different topic. One costume you'd wear forever if you had to.
A moo because it's a
Oh,
tent. You don't have to wear anything. Yeah. Yeah. I live in moo.
oh, you do. Okay, your favorite city
Yeah.
for fashion inspiration?
Um, I want to say many places, but I'm going to say New York City because I think New York City does not give a bleep about what anybody thinks. So you get every fashion sense from every city in the world you can find in New York City because they're proud to show it and they do not adapt to anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one word that describes your design style?
Oh, unhinged. Unhinged,
Ooh.
but that's not the right answer, actually. I think because SK Global just told me recently, I don't know if it was a compliment or a diss. They're like, Farah, you do whimsical very well. And I'm like, that sounds like a
Okay.
diss, but okay. Like, so whimsical. Yeah.
Whimsical. All right. Well, Vera, this was so much fun. I had such a blast talking to you and just learning more about your
You
craft and
too.
your journey. Really, really enjoyed this. Where can our viewers and listeners find you on social media or online?
Is everything's under the same handle, Vera Chow Designs, um, Instagram, website, which I don't update, so nothing fun there.
Do
Instagram,
any of us?
probably. Yeah,
Okay.
Instagram.
All right. So you can
Yeah.
connect with Vera on Instagram. Well, it has been such a pleasure having you. Thank you for chiming in. Vera Chow, all the way from Hong Kong. She's working there right now, but she'll be back here in Hollywood soon enough. Looking out for your
Hmm.
new show this season. And thank you, all of our viewers, our listeners. We appreciate having you. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask our guests, you have any ideas, thoughts, please do feel free to share them with us. And we'd also love to hear from you, as well as don't forget to subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and of course, our YouTube channel. And a reminder, Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, a nonprofit that empowers the Asian Pacific American communities with a voice through media arts. So if you'd like to learn or support our program, please do visit us at acmasocal.org. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm your host, Rasha Goel. You've been listening to Asian Pacific Voices Radio Podcast. Tune in next week for another exciting episode. Take care.